Right now, it's time to check in with Rupert Bell, Talk Radio's royal correspondent in Westminster. He was on the show yesterday in the studio. He's now checking out the preparations this week. He's down in the shadow of Westminster Abbey. Rupert, a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Mike. Well, just a few moments ago, while they may be preparing the Abbey for the coronation, there was a huge demonstration of people against in support of the teachers' strike, and it weaved its way past us. There was a long procession of people protesting, and later on today I think the King is due to meet some of the MPs who perhaps didn't get the invitation and placate a few of the wives who didn't get the invitation as well. So he's coming to talk to the MPs and members of the House of Lords, I believe, later on today, ahead of his big day on Saturday afternoon. And at the moment the sun beateth down, but hopefully there'll be something very similar that we can have on Saturday afternoon, although the weather forecast isn't all that good. But I have to say that the newly restored Big Ben looks spectacular in the spring sunshine.
Yes, it's a beautiful part of the world, isn't it? The Houses of Parliament there in Westminster Abbey across the street, and just the whole kind of feel of London, particularly if the sun is shining. It will make a big difference, I think.
Well, it does, and the King said in the documentary that was aired on Sunday night, that he remembered that he just hopes, and said in it, just hope the weather is nice, because it helps people come out and feel part of it, just feel better, because there's nothing worse standing in the pouring rain. It may look good and you feel you're part of history, but it just elevates the mood. We all want a bit of sunshine, and hopefully for the King it will shine for everyone who comes down here. And I have to say, you see all the preparations. Clearly at the moment there are lots of policemen and women around as this demonstration went through, but obviously the security operation is in full swing already ahead of the service in Westminster Abbey, just to my right here.
Yes, and he'll be buoyed this morning by the results of a poll carried out by one of the newspapers this morning, saying that basically if there were to be a referendum on whether you would keep the monarchy, the resounding answer would be yes.
Yes, and I think that's the important thing. He's always seen himself as the continuity king, and actually you hear some of the interviews from other members of Princess Anne talking about, well, that's what he knows, that is his sense of purpose. He's been 70 years in the waiting for the final, you know, what he was born to be put on this earth for, to be crowned king on a Saturday afternoon. So he doesn't want to change it too much. Clearly, and as Princess Anne has said, he's not going to change in terms of his personality, but he knows he has to slightly adapt his style, but he wants to leave the monarchy in a fit place for not only his son, but subsequent generations of his family.
And yes, I mean, you might argue it's quite a crucial point of history for the royal family as he sort of takes the realm and passes it on to his son, Prince William. And there was a big programme on the other night, you said, on the BBC about Charles and how he got here and where he came from and all of that. But there's been quite a few interesting interviews being done around it as well. Princess Anne was talking to CBS in the United States of America and was asked about some rather personal matters. Have a look at this.
I mean, I'm sorry to bring it up, but I think of that image of your mother, the Queen, by herself.
Yes, at
in
the
that
funeral.
moment.
Yeah.
That was a thievery.
Yeah, you're quite right. And then, in some ways, I'm glad we didn't see that at that moment. And then when you see the photograph, it's much worse somehow. And you saw more of that than we did, accompanying the coffin.
Yes, that's always an image that I think many people will remember. It's been, you know, even for you, Rupert, an incredibly busy kind of year, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, you think from Prince Philip, that funeral, it was a dramatic picture, seeing the Queen sitting in that isolation with her head bowed and sort of just all the thoughts about her late husband. And, you know, clearly there were only 30 people allowed in St George's Chapel that day. Yeah. And it clearly was a defining moment. She also went on to go on how COVID made it very hard for Prince Philip, and that he lost contact with a lot of his friends. But it wasn't just, but what she did say in the interview, saying that, but it wasn't just her family. She sort of referenced the fact that lots of other old people in similar situations lost that all-important human contact during COVID. And the interview is actually a very interesting insight to the Princess Anne. She's not actually frightened of answering any difficult questions, whether it be that one and sort of reflecting the emotion that the family went through at the time. And subsequently, when she talks about that drive from Balmoral to Edinburgh, she describes the crowds as astonishing. That moment on the glorious sort of September day when the coffin was driven through the Scottish countryside, and they got bigger and bigger along the way it went, and she just she couldn't believe it, and presumably, and for her, it must have been a great comfort as she saw the people lining that route as she escorted the coffin to Edinburgh.
Yeah, and it's very rare to see Princess Anne sort of being interviewed like that as well, isn't it?
Yes, well, because she's a fairly no-nonsense individual, doesn't suffer fools gladly. That's fair, but that's always been her testament. But she is absolutely gets her situation and understands that she will be someone that the king can support and lean on for advice, because she is a no-nonsense kind of get-on-and-do-it type of person, doesn't want any fuss and bother, and she's at great pains whenever she turns up anywhere. Don't overdo it, you know, don't fawn all over me, just get on and do your job. That's very much her mantra, and you could see it in the interview. It actually is a very good, and there are lots of clips around the various aspects of it for the interview that she has done for a North American television in the build-up to the coronation. Yeah,
she was also asked about Charles and his role as monarch. Let's see what she had to say about that.
What kind of king do you think he'll be?
Well, you know what you're getting, because he's been practicing for a bit. And I don't think he'll change. You know, he is committed to his own level of service. That will remain true.
That will remain true. He wants a slimmed-down monarchy, and some of the responses in that poll that I mentioned earlier was suggesting that, you know, reform might be something that he should do. But she sort of said she didn't really fancy a slimmed-down monarchy.
Well, because there's still an awful lot to do, and I think she sees it that we need, members of her family need to get out and about, and we need to call on all resources. Well, clearly, that is not being able to happen, because, remember, the Queen very much saw that Prince Andrew would have a role as her escort and actually be out there doing public duties. Well, that's not happening anymore. And obviously Prince Harry and Meghan were very popular until they decided to up sticks and go over to California, and they would have had a prominent role. So there is a degree of pressure on the other working royals. So I don't think we'll see any changes very much. I think what makes sight is some of the buildings and what goes on. Maybe we'll see Buckingham Palace being opened more. We'll see other palaces being opened more so that the public can visit these places. But in terms of what the Princess Royal will be doing, it will very much business as usual. Remember, she's 72, and you've got the King at 74. They're not getting any younger. But the Princess Royal has never been one to shirk her responsibilities, and she thinks nothing better of getting out and about and performing her duty, and she will, as I say, be an invaluable support for the King as a sounding board, and because she is different from him. He's a much more, you see what you get with him, whereas Princess Royal is very much straight up and down and let's just get a stiff upper lip approach. On Saturday, I am pretty sure we'll see at times the King looking very emotional as he finally gets the crown placed on his head on Saturday around about just around midday on Saturday.
Well, if he wants to make it the people's coronation, he's gone about it the right way, because it turns out Ant and Dec are now going to be in attendance at the coronation. Some people said to me, why is it that it's always Ant and Dec? They seem to get everywhere. Now they're even at the coronation, for heaven's sake.
Well, they are very important members of his Princess Trust. You know, and they've been very heavily involved in. That's why Lionel Richie's there.
Right.
Why, Kelly Jones of, I think it's Kelly Jones of Stereophonics.
That's right.
Because they got support from the Princess Trust. And Dynamo the Magician is also going to be there as well. So it gives you an indication that a lot of people have benefited. And while he may be in his 70s, he does and has been at great pains to say, I have to try and make a better future for this country. And the Princess Trust has been going since 1976. It's now a global operation, hence the reason why Lionel Richie will not only be at the coronation but headlining the concert on Sunday evening as well, because of the significance of this. It's often underplayed, but anyone I've spoken to has had contact with the King at anything to do with the Princess Trust or any of his charities and things that he's involved with. His commitment is 100%, and while we don't always see, and he's doesn't want all the fuss again. It is 100%, and anyone who's come into touch with him at the Princess Trust, I think you're hard-pressed to find a dissenting voice.
No, quite. Maybe Dynamo can make Prince Harry disappear.
Well, indeed. Well, they will
Sorry
be.
about that.
I'm sure. I knew you'd do something like that, man. You always like to discombobulate me towards the end and throw in the Harry and Meghan question. But what I will say, it is Princess Charlotte's 8th birthday today, so we've been seeing her picture plastered over all the papers. You just wonder whether there may be a PR riposte from across the water later on today.
Right, brilliant stuff. Well, it's going to be a busy old week, I'm sure, Rupert. Thank you very much indeed. Apologies for the curveball there.